I'm gonna give this question to you that was just asked by Claire, and
Okay.
You don't necessarily have to answer it right now if it's going to interrupt your stream, but I think it's a really important question because I think it's probably the one that most Peak Prosperity audience members have in their mind when they hear, the talk about using leverage in real estate, which is, I think people get the math. I think they understand what you're saying. I think their fear is that the next 20 years might look completely unlike the past 20 years, which is definitely one of the slogans that we say often here at Peak Prosperity. So that if there's a really bad downturn in the economy that impacts rents and occupancy, how and when and under what conditions does the leverage, potentially become a killer? And what are some ways that you might be able to minimize your vulnerability to that?
Okay, this is great. So great question, clearly a great question, and a question I didn't know the right answer to when I was playing the game with max leverage instead of optimum leverage. And I was jumping into all the spec markets because I was just chasing growth to the exclusion of cash flow. And I was at the top of the markets. We were investing in high-rise luxuries that were, all the rage back in the day. So we did a lot of things wrong. What I learned from that, I covered in last session and also in session 1. So session 1 and session 3, I address this, but see, as you go through it, your brain processes and you start thinking. So if you haven't watched those, Claire, go back and watch them. But the bottom line is this: real estate is not an asset class. So rents in the macro, in the average, even in the median, can go down. Incomes can go down. Prices can go down. But when they do, especially incomes, because that's where rents come from, that should be the concern. What's going on with incomes and expenses related to living, right? Because you've got inflation, living expenses. We could go into a whole dissertation on CPI and what a joke it is because it doesn't include energy. Although you could make the argument energy is built into many of the things it does include. It doesn't include food. So, good luck living without food and energy, but be that as it may, the point is when people begin to get squeezed, they move. And this is what you need to understand. If you're in a market, a geographic market, and that geographic market is expensive, and in that geographic market, you are in property types that are at the top of that individual niche market, A properties, nice properties where people live, and you are charging on your properties because you're a great manager, great customer service, great amenities, and you're charging top rent. In a boom, you're golden. In a bust, the people who used to be able to afford to live there can't. The people who are moving up to move up in their lifestyle, who dream of one day living in a neighborhood or a property like yours, that pressure from underneath isn't coming, and there's nobody on top of you because you're in the top market. So take that same level of thinking and say, what if I move to a market that's moderately priced? And what if I was in a product niche in that market that was moderately priced? And what if my rents were just a little bit below the rest of the market because I see the bigger picture? And if I see it coming sooner, how quickly can I begin to lower my rents proactively, sign longer leases, and get people in? So think about that. Now, the economy, the macro factors, whether it's interest rates, taxes, geopolitical issues, whatever it is, the macro starts to come down. People who are in those expensive properties in my market are moving down into my property. They don't want to go all the way down to the properties underneath me because that's beneath them still, but they got to move down a notch. People who are in other marketplaces who can no longer afford to have a great lifestyle. Look at what's going on in Illinois. Look what's going on in California right now. People are moving to Nevada and Arizona. Why? Because they can have a great quality of life with all the amenities, great airport, great entertainment, great shopping, great restaurants, and the quality of life is better. People are making that move people coming from New York and the Northeast going down into Florida. They're making those moves, lower tax jurisdictions. So if you're positioned properly, even in a downturn, you should get your unfair share of upward demand for your product type. The reason I spend so much time focusing on the macro is so that I can see those and pick my markets and product types and price points strategically based on what I think is coming. If we hit a boom, it's fine because everybody underneath me is going to push me up. That's great. I'm not saying I wouldn't want to have a few luxury properties or nice markets, but I definitely think middle market, for all the reasons that we all are concerned about, is the place to be.